We live 2 miles from the end of the last maintained county road. And for the last 5 years, we've cooled all of our food with just ice. But now, thanks to SetPower, we're using the sun to freeze ice cream so we can enjoy it any time of the day, no matter how hot it is, isolated in the middle of the national forest. If you're going to live off grid and you want to have cold food, there's only really 2 choices or options you have. One, using a cooler with ice, or leveraging technology like a solar-powered refrigerator. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of both and share the experiences that we've had using both. All right, let's start with the good old-fashioned cooler and ice. This is probably the simplest way to get started doing cold food storage off-grid. The advantage is it's actually initially cheaper. You can buy a cooler from anywhere from $40 to $300, and all you need to do is be able to add ice to it. Another advantage of it is it requires no infrastructure. All you have to do is have a supply of ice. And a third advantage of doing the old cooler method is you're always going to have ice available for making cocktails or having cool drinks. Now, what are some of the cons of the cooler? Well, one is you have to go into town to get ice. And for us, it's a 2-hour trip just to go get ice. Number 2, ice only lasts maybe a week or so. You can buy more ice, but one of the problems is that ice takes up room in your cooler. So the more ice you have, the less room you have for cold food. The third thing is the ice doesn't get very cold. It stays just at about 32 degrees, so no frozen goods. Another problem that you have with the ice is that the ice melts. It makes your egg cartons get soaked and fall apart, and the water gets manky over time. If you have any leakage from any of your foodstuffs, then it gets into the water, it gets nasty, and you're always cleaning your cooler.
The worst part of living off-grid. We cool all of our food with ice. We use about 20 pounds of ice a week during the summer. I hate the 2-hour drive to the grocery store. And these machines.
I think my care weight is too high. Thank you.
The ice is heavy. And expensive. I miss the mountains already. Where is my self-checkout discount? Two more hours driving home.
All right, let's talk about this solar refrigerator concept. It's super convenient. It works just like your refrigerator at home. You can keep all of your refrigerate when open goods are in there. It's kind of a silent option that runs in the background. It's something you really don't have to think about. Super convenient. You don't really have to clean it. And you even have the option to have a freezer so that you could have things like ice cream. But what are the disadvantages? Well, initial cost for one. You're going to spend anywhere from $600 to $1,200 on a solar refrigerator. And on top of that, you need to have a reliable solar power infrastructure, which depending on your size, could be anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000. So if you're just starting in the off-grid world, you can get by on your cooler and ice and make that work for years, which is what we did. We went about 5 years running a cooler with ice, and while inconvenient, it allowed us time to build up our solar infrastructure, so now we can upgrade to a solar refrigerator. And we're going to share a lot about both the pains of the ice that we had and the transition that we've gone through going from our ice and cooler system to our solar-powered refrigerator. So for the last 5 years, we've been managing our cold food storage with just ice. And when you do the numbers on it, if you're not here full time, it was really the most efficient way to go about doing things. We're using a Grizzly cooler. It's 60 quarts, and we go through about 20 pounds of ice a week. Now, before shrinkflation happened, you used to be able to get a 20-pound bag of ice for about $2.99 or so. And now they've changed the size to 16 pounds. So we're taking a little bit less there. But the idea is you just dump it into your cooler. And we just refresh it, every week. But there's a lot of challenges with this. So even in the winter, we use ice. And you might ask yourself, why do we do that? And the real issue is that if we just took snow or ice from the river, there's actually bacteria in that. And if you're not using clean ice, your cooler smells. So even in the winter, you're paying for ice. The other issue too is that as you put things into the cooler, if it's not well sealed, like pickles, for example, or cottage cheese, you're gonna get pickle juice and cottage cheese juice into your melted ice and melted water. So every time that you empty out your cooler to go grocery shopping, you always have to clean it. And then let's talk about meat. Things like chicken, if you don't double bag it, you get yourself into trouble, because the chicken juices or the beef juices or whatever meat you're eating will also leak into the ice and the ice water. And that just makes for nasty and smelly and just unsanitary conditions. So while ice works, there's a better way. And that's what we're going to show you today. So this is how we're going to transition from ice to sun-powered cooling. This is the SetPower TC75. The 75 is the liter volume of the cooler. So this is 75 liters, which is actually just under 80 quarts. That's 20 more quarts than we've been doing in our Grizzly cooler. Now, our Grizzly cooler was a 60 quart unit, and empty, it weighs 30 pounds. Now, if you throw in the 16 pounds of ice, you're at 56 pounds. This weighs just under 60 pounds when it's out of the box. So about the same weight with ice, but this gives you 20 more quarts. So we can get way more food into here. And frankly, what I'm really looking forward to is leaving refrigerate after open goods in the cooler, instead of, if I have to go to town for 2 or 3 days, hope that I have enough ice. So another challenge with just using a cooler and ice is that ice takes up space. And so this is 3 days of food for 3 people. And so by the time you put in your ice and your food, you don't have a whole bunch of room left. Now, we probably could get, another day or so or 2 of food, but it's really hard to get a whole week of food in the refrigerator, into the cooler, just because you have to give up a lot of the inside space to your ice. We're gonna go ahead and unbox this and just show how it ships and kind of go through some of the features before we plug it in and start cooling it down. Another thing to think about is when you put something into ice, what happens with ice? It melts. And so things like eggs, if you don't keep them up out of the ice and they hit it and it melts, the boxes get soggy. So then you're either putting them into an egg holder, which takes up even more space, or you're being careful not to break them or crack them because this falls apart. So the unit shipped just like this, and I had to have it actually shipped to my an in-town address because we don't get deliveries way out here. For those who've watched before, you can see this video that I'm going to go ahead and tag, but we live 2 miles from the end of the last maintained county road. And so having this thing shipped up here was not an option. So we had to have it shipped to an in-town address, and oh, look at that. I was worried I was going to have to cut the sides open, but boy, this is packaged really nicely. This just slides right off. How easy is that? Cool. But anyway, I was saying I had it shipped in town, and then we just drove it up. So, wow, it's a good looking device. Cool. Well packaged, nice. So you can see how all this ice melts, and the water can get pretty gorky and pretty nasty, and you get a lot of funky smells.
Plus, now I got to go through the task of emptying this, and that's never fun because it's so heavy.
So this is the unit all unboxed. That was probably the easiest unboxing of a big bulky item I've ever seen. Let's open this up and see what we got in here. This is, silica gel. Don't eat it, but it smells delicious. And then on this side, oh, look at this. All right, accessory box and more silica gel. And then this looks like this must be, I don't want to talk about features till I read the manual, but I'm guessing like maybe freezer basket types. If you look at the control panel, it looks like you can choose which side is freezer and which is refrigerator. So we'll go and validate that through the manual, but let's see what accessories are here. You have a car adapter. We don't do that. This is not going to be mobile and portable. And then here is a AC cord. All right, I'm going to sit down, read the manual, and then we'll update you on what our plan is. All right, so remember that this cooler is 30 pounds and the water that's in there is 16, and it's just awkward dumping it out. Like I said, I could drain it, but then it dribbles and drains all over the floor when I'm trying to drain it. So I'm excited to be using a refrigerator. All right, so here's the Energy Star guide. They're saying they're estimating 165 kilowatt hours a year. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tell you what the amperage draw is when the compressor is running and talk about the wattage that's consuming here in real life when we're actually using it. So probably a good estimate, but I'll tell you what the real numbers are. All right, this cooler is designed to be kind of portable, but we're using it in an off-grid scenario. So the standard power for it is like a cigarette lighter, and you have this power cable that connects here. Now this runs on 12 or 24 volts. So for an off-grid location, I would like to directly wire this to my batteries. If I do that, I would need to split the cord and put a 15 amp fuse in there. So for now, we're gonna go ahead and use the supplied 120 volt converter. And so you just plug this into that outlet, and then we can plug this into my house power. So we're just gonna run off 120 volts for now. But let's talk a little bit about the power and battery features of this. It's really designed to be done on a 12 or 24 volt system. And in fact, the way that the power unit is set up is it has a voltage sensor to make sure that you have a minimum battery charge before the compressor turns on. And if your voltage drops low enough, it'll actually turn the compressor off. And the reason it does that is imagine if you're in your car and you're out, enjoying a stadium game, and you leave this plugged in, but it starts to drain your battery, or you're parked for a few days and your battery starts to go down, it will actually turn off and make sure you have enough charge left so that you can actually start your car, which is a cool feature. But in an off-grid location, it's actually a nice feature as well if you have a 12 or 24 volt setup to prevent it from draining your batteries as well. All right, so I have the unit plugged in. It's not turned on, the compressor's not running, but a nice feature is that it's actually a lighted cooler on the inside. All right, so I've kind of figured out the interface. What you have to do is you make sure the unit's powered off, press and hold these two buttons for 3 seconds, and then you short press this to go to Fahrenheit or Celsius. So I'm gonna leave it, it was in Fahrenheit from the factory, so it's in Fahrenheit. So now, what I wanna do now is set the battery protection level. So this is that feature I told you about before where it has a certain amount of voltage required for startup and what cutoff is. I'm gonna set it to mid. That aligns up, I think, better with my battery voltages. Again, right now I'm running off of 120, but when I'm directly hooked up to my 12 volt,
The startup voltage of 11.7 and cut off at 10.4 makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to set that now. Again, hold this for 2-3 seconds. Okay, and then now we cycle through these guys. There we go. And he's at the mid setting now. All right, so let's power it on. This is the current temperature of each side. Because we're in Fahrenheit now, I'm going to set the temperature that I'd like it to be at. Since this is a refrigerator, I'm gonna guess, let's go to 38 for right now. And the small side I can do as a freezer, but I wanna set that to, let's go to 34 and 34, and we'll do a freeze test once this cools down. So this is our starting temperatures, and you can ask it to cool faster by switching mode. This is the eco mode, and that just uses less energy, but it's not going to cool as fast. And then this max cooling will cool it down faster. So I'll go ahead and start the clock ticking now, but let's go ahead in eco mode and see how long it takes to drop to that 34 degrees. Okay, so let's do a little bit of a power test. Right now we're drawing about 16.5 amps at 12 volts or 12.8 volts. Let's go ahead and turn on the cooler and see what that jumps up to. Oh, I just saw it kick in. And the startup, current draw, and the running draw is about the same. So 21 to 16. Right now it's drawing about 5 to 6 amps. And the manual says that it's going to draw a max of 7 at 12 volts. So we're right in line with that. And I expect it to draw power until it cools down. All right, when we started just a few minutes ago, we were at this temperature was up at 60. And this is on the far side, this is the compressor side, and this is at 68 still. This one's moved down 2 or 3 degrees already. Let's go ahead and see how long this takes to get to 34 degrees. All right, so one of the features on this is, this is designed to go into your car, but let's say you wanted to have this open up a different way. You actually can flip these lids around. Now, I'm a big guy, and this takes some horsing, but you pop those out, you lift it up, then you can flip it around and put the lid onto this side. Now, I actually like where the lid is, so I'm going to put it back. But that's kind of a cool feature, but it does take some muscle to pull it off. So after 15 minutes, the left side's down to 42 degrees, and I did go to max mode just to see if we can get it to cool down quickly. But so far the right side hasn't moved, so I'm wondering if it cools one side at a time from a power perspective. We'll wait when this one hits its target temperature, which I actually set to 36 after consulting the internet. That seems to be right in the middle of your ideal refrigerator temperature range. All right, so this was also in the package, and really what's kind of interesting in here is they guarantee the product that 30 days for any reason you can return it. If the package was damaged, they guarantee you're going to get compensated for that. And you have a 3-year warranty on the compressor and a year for everything else. That's actually a pretty darn good warranty. I mean, we're going to be depending on this. You never have to worry about ice breaking, but if this ever breaks, it's nice that they're going to stand behind it. So the company seems to have their stuff together. That's cool. I guess we can also talk about breakage really quick. I suppose that if we did have a problem with this, you should be able to just throw ice in here anyway. So that's the nice part about this being in a cooler format. And if you're relying on a product and you're living off grid, having a backup to your backup is pretty important. So once this side started to cool down, he actually exceeded his cooling point. He's down to 34. This one starts to move more rapidly. So I'm assuming there's some sort of control to allow it to cool or one at a time. But here's the interesting thing. I'm running this on the high non-eco setting, and it's just quiet. You could easily have this in your car. You could easily have this really in any number of places. You could sleep next to this super quiet unit. So I've been sitting here on this, and this is really designed as a car unit, not so much as like an off-grid unit, but I think it's going to work excellent for our purposes. But as a car unit, I was like, I'm a 250-pound guy, and it is solid as heck. And as long as you can kick your buddy out of the way, one of the nice things I like about this is the easy access you can get to cold beer. All right, so when I was cooling before, I'm not going to open up this side, just I wanted to get it to temperature. I'm going to feel the walls on this unit. Yes, they're definitely cold now. So it clearly heats and cools one side at a time, which is actually a really clever feature. It doesn't say that in the manual, but you can tell just by the way that it's cooling. It's bringing down one side, then the other. We've been running on this cooler now for, I don't know, about a half a week, and just want to show you, it's been doing great. We have ample room. We're getting whole chickens in there. We don't have to worry about our eggs melting or having any problems. Gallon of milk. No more worrying about ice water getting into our meats and produce. And we have been able to exist on just one half of this unit for cooling, and we're using the other side as a freezer. And so we have ice cream now inside, which has been great. The interesting thing about the freezer is it does take a lot of work to cool down. And so you can see how we threw some meat in here to freeze up. I put this meat in last night, and we're now just getting to the point where I'm starting to get ice and pieces of ice and the meat to cool down. So I think what we're mostly going to use this for is not as a freezer, but just as a refrigerator, because it does take so much energy for it to cool down. So, but very overall impressed with the size, the unit, the quiet, and the power consumption. What are you doing, girls?
Eating ice cream.
How long has it been since you've had ice cream at the cabin?
Literally never.
Yeah, so what, 5 years? Isn't this amazing?